Welcome. In this production record training course, we will discuss what is a production record, how to complete it. We'll talk through receiving deliveries and what to do before, during, and after meal service. We'll also talk through storage and record keeping. And at the end, we'll walk through a specific example of your vendor's food service production record paperwork and how to complete it. Here's our basic production record. This paperwork can go by many different names: production record, transit log, daily vendor receipts, menu production record, daily delivery reports. Whichever name you choose, it's really the same thing. It tells the daily story of your meal service. It's a snapshot in time of the work your kitchen completed that day. But for this training, we'll simply stick with calling this paperwork your production record. More specifically, what is a production record? A production record is a daily paper count of the meals received and served, along with a listing of the NSLP meal components. Your production record will include total counts and quantities of the meals received in a delivery. Think of this like the packing slip in your Amazon box that itemizes what you received. A breakout of each menu component and the amount that component credits towards the NSLP meal pattern. If you ever wondered what fruit or vegetable should be paired with today's entree, this is where you find the answer. It will include the times and temperatures of when your food left the production facility. Your delivery driver completes this section, but it's important you also confirm that all temperatures stay in the safe ranges. Remember, that's 40 or below for cold and above 140 for hot. This record will also have a grid of blank spaces for you to record the meals you served along with the temperatures at the time of service. This is where you show how many meals you started with and at what temperature, how many meals did you serve, how many meals, if any, that you had left over, and then what you're doing with those leftovers. For our practice, we will be using a simplified production record, but we should note, since all vendors have slightly different paperwork, sometimes the transportation log and the production record are separated out into two forms, but this process of completing will be the same, and we'll cover that now. Receiving meal deliveries. With vended meal service, your food vendor will bring your production record paperwork with your daily delivery. When your meal arrives, you should review the meal counts and quantities together with your driver. And yes, you're going to need to count everything. Make sure the production records reflect what's actually being delivered. If items are missing or different, make the changes by hand. In our example, the delivery includes 50 hot dogs, 50 baby carrots, 50 apples, and 25 of each type of milk. Was there a substitution? This happens. Make the changes by simply crossing off the original item and writing in the new item. In this example, our apples are now oranges. If there is an issue, it's best to resolve it with the driver. Sometimes a box is left on the truck. If there's a larger issue, be sure to note it on the production records. Take photos if possible, and email your vendor as soon as possible. They may be able to correct it in the same day, or they'll provide a bill credit if it's warranted. After you inspect the delivery and agree it's correct, go ahead and sign the production record to acknowledge receiving it. Preparing for meal service. Now it's time to prepare for your daily lunch service. You will begin by reviewing your production records. Your planned total and delivered total may differ. You may choose not to serve all the meals you receive. For example, the 6th graders are out on a field trip that no one told you about, so participation today will be lower. Do note, use the blank spaces around the production record to record and add notes about any deviations from normal meal service. It's much easier to make a few notes than rely on your memory in the future. Back to our example. We plan to put out all items we received on the line, and we will still record those quantities in the total planned column. We'll have 50 hot dogs, baby carrots, and oranges, along with 25 of each type of milk. You must take the temperature of all hot and cold items. We'll cover food safety in a different course. Just never forget to use a probe thermometer and record the temperatures on your production records at the time of service. Remember, the production record paperwork should be completed throughout your shift, not just at the end of the day. Now you're ready to welcome students into your cafeteria and serve. During meal service, you should keep your production record paperwork nearby while you are serving. If there are dropped or damaged meals, make a note when it happens because your counts will be off later and you'll want to remember why. After meal service. After all the students are offered a meal, you can start your cleanup process by counting and recording your meals left over. The math is simple, and it's always the same. Take the number of meals you started with, Then subtract any leftovers, and that would include dropped or damaged items, and that will equal the total served. To double check this, pull up your end of service report in your point of sale system and confirm these numbers should match. If they don't, now is the time to investigate why and correct the error while your memory is still fresh. Remember, no matter what your production record looks like, the basic info is always the same. Every day you will document, what did you start with? What are you physically putting out on the line? What did you serve? What did you have left over? And what are you doing with the leftovers? Now let's discuss record keeping. Your school is responsible for completely filling these records out every day. Even if your vendor does not bring the paperwork, you still must document this information. But by now you know the formula, so it's easy to make your own record. You will want to write down what you started with and at what temp, what did you serve, what did you have left over, and what you did with those leftovers. Your kitchen should have a 3-hole punch and binder to keep these records organized. This doesn't need to be a fancy system. Just place them in the binder in the order of most recent on the top in case you need to go back and find a day. Remember, you must keep these records for 3 years, so have a secure place to store them. Here are the key takeaways from today. Production records go by many names, but the info is the same. The production records are the story of what you did in the kitchen that day. Production records are the record of what you started with, what you served, and what you had left over. Production records must be completed at every meal service. The USDA checks this. That's what your AR is. Now let's look at an example from your specific vendor. Revolution Foods. With Revolution Foods, you will still document the same 4 things. What did you start with? What did you serve? What did you have left over? And what are you going to do with those leftovers? Let's first talk about what did you start with. We will go back to our first example where we started with 50 hot dogs, baby carrots, apples, and 25 of each milk. Here's an example of the actual Revolution Foods paperwork. Your driver will bring this to you when they deliver your food. Be sure to go through and check for correctness. If any of the quantities differ from what you actually received, cross the number out and write in the actual count. As you prepare for service, go ahead and record the meals you are physically putting out on your service line under the serving produced column. Normally this is going to be the same amount of meals you received, but not always. Be sure to count what you actually are planning to serve. Remember, you must always take the temperature of the meals you serve. For hot meals, they must reach 165 degrees and then be held at 140, and for cold meals, they must stay 40 degrees and below. Be sure to write down the temperature and the time you take it. This must be done daily. Was there a substitution? Remember in our first example we were expecting apples but actually got oranges? Not a big deal, just cross out apples and write in oranges. Great, that's what we started with. Now let's talk about what we served. Be sure to run the end of day report in your point of sale system to verify the accuracy of your meal counts. In our scenario, we served 47 hot dogs, 47 baby carrots, 47 oranges, 25 1% milks, and 22 fat-free milks. First, we will record the total students served. That's 47. Put that at the top. Then, for each category, write in the total served section the amount of that unit you served. Our example is simple, but it won't be like this every day. Some days you'll serve more fruits than vegetables or vice versa. These counts must be accurate, and this data will help you for ordering in the future. Now let's talk about what you have left over. Write down the total amount of meals left over. You should be able to verify this by seeing those left over on your line. What are we going to do with those leftovers? In the comments section, you'll be able to write RTS, return to stock, for things like milk, or you can write trash for things like a hot meal that must be discarded. When you're done, 3-hole punch and put in your binder for storage. And don't forget, we're going to keep these for 3 years after the original year of service. And that's it. You're ready to go.